I've always liked supernatural stuff. Ghost videos, real reports on the internet, forums with people telling strange experiences. I consumed all that like entertainment. It was a comfortable fear. If it got too much, I just paused the video, closed the tab, and that was it. Real life stayed the same. This story is the first time I tell something that happened to me. Something that, until today, I can't treat as just entertainment. And honestly, I wish it had stayed only on the screen. Everything happened when I traveled alone to another city to attend a music event I had been looking forward to for months. It was going to be a vacation week, concerts, bands I'd always wanted to see, some time away from home. Since money was tight, I rented an apartment through Airbnb. The photos were nice, modern decor, gray sofa, open-plan kitchen. Everything looked brand new, almost everything. The first time I entered the apartment, backpack on my shoulders, I felt that strangeness that only shows when a photo becomes a real space. And the first thing that stood out was it. A large, old mirror hanging on the living room wall. In the listing photos, it barely appeared, just a small slice of shine in the background. In real life, it dominated the place. The frame was dark, worn wood, with carvings I couldn't tell whether were flowers, leaves, or somewhat deformed faces. The glass had a slightly yellowish tone, with stains along the edges, as if time had seeped in. In the middle of so much clean minimalism, it looked like a decorating mistake, or a leftover from another house, forgotten there. At the moment, my reaction was split. Half of me thought it was tacky. The other half, the part that always liked ghost stories, thought it was extremely interesting. I dropped my suitcase in the bedroom, took a shower, tidied up. Before leaving for the first day of the event, I paused for a few seconds in front of the mirror. The living room light was strong and white, but inside the reflection it seemed a bit weaker, as if the room in there was a shade darker. I noticed. I thought it odd, and I ignored it. That night I returned late, almost 2 a.m. The building hallway was silent, that echo of footsteps that always sounds like someone else is there. I walked into the apartment, closed the door, tossed the key on the kitchen counter. That's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 short, dry knocks. Not very loud, but close enough for me to know they came from the living room direction. I stood still, listening. Silence returned. I thought of everything it could be. Neighbor, pipes, wood creaking, fridge. I turned on the living room light, took a general look around. Nothing out of place. The mirror reflected only my tired face, disheveled hair, the event badge hanging around my neck. I spoke aloud, as if I needed to hear myself. You're imagining things, man. I sat on the sofa, fiddled with my phone, but I noticed that, from time to time, my gaze returned to the mirror. It was like staring at a turned-off TV. You know nothing will show, yet you keep waiting for something to happen. That night, nothing else occurred, at least nothing obvious. On the second night, things leveled up. I came back earlier, around midnight. As soon as I walked in, I felt a slight difference. From the door to the kitchen, the air had normal temperature. But when I stepped into the living room, I felt a dry cold coming from the direction of the mirror. It wasn't wind. It felt like that part of the room was a few degrees colder. I got close, almost touching the glass with my nose. I saw my face up close. Dark circles, dry sweat from the street, red tired eyes. My breath fogged the surface lightly, forming a dull circle around my mouth area. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. Now with no doubt, on the glass. A shiver ran straight down my spine. I stood there, trying to force my brain to pick any explanation. Wood creaking, building vibration, anything. I looked to the side, up to the frame, like I could see the origin of the sound. Nothing. Must be just the building, I dunno, I muttered. More to calm down then, because I believed it. That night I noticed something else. Every time I passed through the living room and glanced at the mirror, and this began happening automatically, I had the impression that the reflection took a little longer to follow my movement. A minimal delay, milliseconds. I turned my head, and for a very short instant, it felt like my eyes in the glass were still in the previous position. It was so subtle I could have dismissed it as suggestion, and that's what I did. On the third day, Curiosity beat fear. I came back from the event, took a shower, ate something. Instead of going straight to the bedroom, I sat on the sofa, facing the mirror. I grabbed my phone, opened the front camera, pointed it at the mirror. I started recording, did some stupid tests, raised my arms slowly, turned my head, moved fingers. On the phone screen, everything seemed normal, like any mirror recording, but looking directly at the glass, the delay sensation remained. Small but constant. Then I noticed the first thing that was definitely wrong. In the lower left corner of the reflection, a smudge, a faint shadow that didn't correspond to anything in the room. It wasn't a piece of furniture, not an object. It was a darkness a bit denser, lodged there in the glass. I turned my head to check the actual corner. Nothing. Light-colored wall, baseboard floor. No shadow, nothing different. It existed only in the mirror. I got closer, squinting. The more I stared, the more it seemed that area of the reflection had depth, as if the mirror was slightly deeper at that point. It wasn't clear. You couldn't say that's it. It was the suggestion of a void, a spot that swallowed some light. The room's silence became heavy. The street noise faded, like it was 2 blocks away. I could only hear my breath and the low hum of the fridge in the background. Then, only in the reflection, the lighting seemed to dim a little. The real room lamp stayed the same, but the version in the mirror grew a bit darker, like the room in there had dropped a level in brightness. My heart raced. I stepped back, instinctively switching off the real light. No rational reason. The room went dim, lit only by the bluish glow from outside the window. My silhouette reappeared in the glass, dark. That's when I saw it, at shoulder height. Behind my head in the reflection, there was something. Not a person, not a clear shape. More like a concentrated darkness, a patch of shadow darker than the rest. An outline that didn't match any furniture that I turned around immediately. There was nothing behind me. That was the first time fear crossed the line from funny scare to real dread. I stopped recording, grabbed my stuff, went straight to the bedroom, and locked the door. I knew that if there really was something, a wooden door wouldn't stop it, but psychologically it helped. I took a long time to sleep. Every building noise made me hold my breath. At some point deep at night, I woke with a clear sensation. Someone was in the living room. I didn't hear footsteps or a door. It was just a presence, cold, certain. Inside me, I felt this presence wasn't in the apartment. It was in the mirror. In the morning, sunlight through the window made everything look ridiculous. The mirror seemed just an ugly object again. I left early, spent the day out, tried to drown the feeling with noise, music, people. But deep down, I knew I'd have to go back, and that it would be there. On the 4th night, I seriously considered canceling the rest of the stay. Quit, find a hostel, sleep on the floor or anything. But money was tight, and I was going home in 2 days. I told myself, you could hold on. When I opened the apartment door, I sensed it before seeing. The air felt denser, not exactly cold, but heavy, like the room had shrunk a little. I left the hallway light on and kept the living room light off. Still, I could see the mirror reflecting a strip of illumination behind me. One detail froze me. In the reflection, the bedroom door looked more open than it really was. Here outside, it was just slightly ajar, a tiny gap. In there, I could see deeper darkness past it, as if the opening was wider. Before I could think properly, the sounds returned. They weren't the 3 knocks anymore. I heard something like fabric dragging, a soft brush, and a low, rhythmic sound like fingernails sliding behind wood, all coming from around the mirror. I stepped too close. I can't explain why. It was like something was pulling me slowly toward it. The old excuse, curiosity, became my justification to approach what I'd been trying not to see. What do you want? I whispered without thinking. My voice sounded strange, dry. In the reflection, my lips seemed to move slightly out of sync. Tiny, but enough to make my throat dry. I stood a few seconds waiting for something. A sudden move. A clearer shadow, anything. But nothing happened. The sound faded slowly, like retreating. Instead of relief, I felt discomfort. The sensation that something had realized I was watching. That night, for a stupid reason, I fell asleep on the sofa, facing the mirror. I don't remember exactly when I dozed off. I remember how I woke up. It wasn't with a noise. It was with cold. A perfectly localized cold on the back of my neck. Like an ice-cold hand had rested there. My entire body jerked. My heart raced. I tried to understand where I was. The room was dark. Streetlight filtered just enough to outline shadows. My neck burned with cold, like I had spent too long under an air conditioner. My eyes went straight to the mirror. The reflected room looked the same. Couch, table, door. But there was one simple, glaring mistake. In the mirror, I was still lying down. Outside, I was sitting, breathing heavily. Inside, in the glass, my body was still in the position I had been seconds ago. On my side, covered to the shoulder, eyes closed. I froze. The me in the reflection started to move. First ahead, it turned slowly, like it heard something. Then the torso, rising in a sequence of slightly too rigid movements, like someone copying emotion without understanding how a body works. It sat up, exactly how I was now, only delayed, like the scene was being replayed. When the head was up, our eyes met. At that moment, I was absolutely certain I wasn't just looking at myself. There was something in the reflection's gaze I didn't recognize in myself. Too much focus, a presence behind the eyes, like someone was watching me from inside my own face. I felt a weight on my chest. The room shrank a few inches. A thought crossed my mind, but it didn't feel like mine. Don't look away. And I didn't. I kept staring at the reflection, paralyzed. It didn't do anything dramatic. No smile, no movement. It just held the stare, still, intense, painful. Then came the sound. Tap, tap, tap. Only this time, I felt the touch behind my head, like it was hitting the inside of my skull. And at the same time, I heard the echo inside the glass. That was my limit. I jumped up, almost tripping, and switched on all the lights I could reach. When I looked back, the reflection was normal. Me standing there, tense face, living room lit. Nothing weird, no visible delay, no independent reflection. The next day, I already knew. I wouldn't sleep in the living room again. I could hold on. It was almost time to leave. I left early, spent the day out on purpose, avoiding going back to the apartment. On the last night before leaving, I made the final mistake. I decided to deal with it. I got back early from the show, turned on the TV for background noise, walked around the living room a few times before facing the mirror. My idea was simple, cover it. I found a thin white sheet in the bedroom closet. I walked to the living room, getting close to the frame without looking directly at the reflection. I lifted the sheet and threw it over the mirror. The fabric felt heavy, covering everything. The room seemed to relax, like someone had taken a stare off me. For a few minutes, it worked. I pretended it wasn't there. I sat on the sofa, turned on any show in the background, scrolled my phone. Occasionally, my peripheral vision hit the sheet hanging on the wall, and I felt a quick, uneasy flicker, but I ignored it until I noticed the sheet wasn't straight anymore. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a strange bulge at the bottom, like something behind it pushing the fabric outward. I stared, waiting for it to slip, drop, anything I could blame on gravity. Instead, the bulge rose a few centimeters, slowly, as if something was sliding behind the sheet. Soon after, the sheet gave a small tremor, subtle but too real to be imagination. Then came a muffled nearby sound, like nails slightly scratching behind the glass, under the fabric. That's when I understood covering it hadn't fixed anything. I just put a thin layer between us, and that layer was reacting. I stood up, heart racing, took 2 steps toward the bedroom door. I prepared to spend the rest of the night locked in there. Before entering, I glanced back. The sheet moved again, this time. The bottom edge was pulled inward slightly, as if the mirror had opened a little and sucked the fabric in. That sight lasted maybe a second. It was enough. I ran to the bedroom, locked the door, jammed a chair under the handle. A useless but desperate gesture. I lay in bed fully dressed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, hearing the silence. I don't remember actually sleeping. I remember short naps and waking with the feeling that someone was standing beside the bed, looking at me. I gathered courage, turned my head, but saw nothing. yet the feeling lingered. Until dawn, I got a feeling wrecked, like I'd been beaten. I carefully opened the bedroom door, expecting anything. The living room was silent, TV off, the sheet still covering the mirror, still motionless. I cleaned up automatically, packed my bags, checked I hadn't forgotten anything, all while avoiding looking at the wall where it stood. When I finished, I picked up the luggage and went to the main door, hand on the doorknob. Just turn and leave. Get out of that apartment, that building, that city. Then curiosity hit me one last time. Just look one more time. It's the last time. I knew it was a trap, not by something external, but by myself. I set the luggage down, walked back to the mirror, stood in front of it, my hand shaking. I grabbed the corner of the sheet. I pulled. The fabric slid down slowly, revealing the dark frame and yellowed glass. Gradually, the reflected room appeared. My suitcase dropped to the side, my figure still. And for a few seconds, just that, me staring at myself in an old mirror. It looked normal, until I noticed the detail. In the reflection, the door behind me was open. Out here, I was still holding the doorknob, door closed. My whole body stiffened. I froze completely. In the mirror, the me over there let go of the suitcase, which fell to the floor with a small bounce. I hadn't made that movement. My hands were still gripping the wrinkled sheet. Slowly, the reflection turned its head toward the open door in there. The expression on its face changed almost imperceptibly. The color drained, eyes widened, jaw clenched. It was looking at something in the corridor. I saw the reaction. I didn't see what it saw. The corridor and the mirror ended outside the frame. My reflection took a step back, as if something was approaching. Its breathing quickened, chest rising and falling faster. At no moment did I repeat those movements out here. That was enough. I dropped the sheet, letting it fall again over the mirror, erasing that scene. I grabbed the suitcase without really looking, opened the door for real and left. I returned the key and sent the standard message to the host. Everything was great. Thanks for the stay. Then went straight to the airport. I did the obvious. I left the mirror there. I left the building, the neighborhood, the apartment. I didn't take anything concrete with me. At least, nothing I could point to. Since then, my relationship with mirrors changed. I don't stand in front of any reflective surface for long anymore. I avoid looking directly into my eyes for more than a few seconds. Sometimes I turn off the bathroom light and leave too quickly, just to avoid that moment when the reflection seems to lag a second before disappearing. And every now and then, on random days, I have the clear sensation that my reflection arrives late. Tiny delay. My head moves first here, and only a second later there. It's so fast that, if I try to show someone, it doesn't happen. On some nights, with the lights low, I swear I've seen, behind my head in the mirror, a dark outline that doesn't belong to any furniture in my house. Something like a frame. The thing that bothers me the most is something else. After I came back, I opened the app and searched the apartment listing. I wanted to see the photos again, confirm if the mirror had always been there. The listing was still up. The photos of the living room were the same. Gray sofa, modern kitchen, bedroom door. But on the wall where the mirror stood, there was nothing. No mirror, no picture, nothing in its place, as if it had never existed. I left the mirror and the mystery behind that week, like I was closing a chapter. But every time I walk by any reflective surface and feel that millisecond delay, I remember this. I left alone. The problem is, I'm not sure if my reflection came with me. Your support keeps the stories coming. Like and subscribe. I've never been the kind of person to blame things on the supernatural. Strange noise at home, old structure, sound at night, neighbors, weird feeling, anxiety. I truly believed all that, until this trip. I'm telling you this story because ever since I got back, my head has been spinning in circles, trying to fit what I experienced into something normal. Sometimes I almost convince myself it was just a series of coincidences, maybe even a cruel prank. But when I remember the eyes, especially on that last night, that almost disappears. I had decided to move to another state. No romantic dream behind it, just pure necessity. Stuck life, low salary, new opportunity popping up in another city. A job opening came up in a seemingly quiet neighborhood, and the interview was scheduled for Friday. I chose to arrive a few days earlier on purpose. I wanted to get a feel for the area. Noise, safety, neighbors, shops. I wanted to test whether I could really live there. So I rented a house on Airbnb. A small corner house, simple but neat. Two things caught my attention in the photos. A little porch with a blue hammock and a quiet street with trees and similar-looking houses. It looked like an old neighborhood where everyone knows each other. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. At first glance, the neighborhood was exactly what I expected. Narrow streets, a few kids playing, a dog barking in the distance, old cars parked along the sidewalks. You could hear pots clanging, a radio playing in some house, the smell of food in the air. Since the owner lived in another city, I was greeted by a neighbor, a man around 50, slim, wearing the local soccer team's shirt. He introduced himself as Paolo, shook my hand firmly, smiling. "Anything you need, just holler, all right?" he said, pointing to the house across the street with a low wall. "I'm right there." Across the street, an older lady was sweeping the sidewalk. She looked at me, smiled and waved. I waved back. A bit farther, a younger woman with a child in her arms nodded at me. Right then, I felt exactly what I wanted to feel. Old school neighborhood, people who watch but seem friendly. It was my idea of a good place to live. Inside, the house was simple but decent. Small living room, slightly worn-out sofa, old but working TV. Kitchen with old tiles, but clean. In the bedroom, a double bed, noisy ceiling fan, and a window facing the side of the house. A narrow corridor with a high wall separating it from the street. I dropped my backpack, took a shower, organized my documents for the interview. Late afternoon, I sat on the porch with a coffee, just to watch the neighborhood go by. I saw Paolo go into his house. The lady put away her broom. The kid already on the ground playing by the sidewalk. Everything normal. Almost too normal. Night fell slowly. The streetlights came on, the conversations faded, and the sound of TVs took over. At some point, I closed the front door, turned on the living room TV, and flopped on the couch. That's when I felt it for the first time. It wasn't a noise or shadow. It was a very clear, almost physical feeling that someone was standing outside on the sidewalk, staring directly at the house, like someone's focus had locked exactly onto me. I tried to ignore it, kept switching channels, scrolling on my phone, but the sensation of being watched didn't go away. Every now and then, my eyes would drift toward the living room window, which faced the street. The curtain was thin, letting in some light. I could have pulled it aside and looked, but I didn't. Not that first night. Even so, I managed to sleep. I woke up once or twice to the heavy silence of the neighborhood, but I didn't hear anything that justified fear. In the morning, when I opened the front door, the world seemed completely different. The street full of sunlight, people leaving for work, kids by the gate, motorcycles passing by. I walked to the corner bakery. On the way back, Paolo was outside, working on a car. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Yeah, I did," I replied, still laughing at myself for finding the night weird. The broom lady greeted me again. The kid waved. The normality of the morning made it feel ridiculous to give any importance to that nighttime feeling. First night in a new place is always like that, I thought. I spent the day exploring the neighborhood, looked for the bus stop, supermarket, pharmacy, all the basics for daily life. I came back home early evening, tired but satisfied. Deep down, I was already starting to picture myself living there. The second night started just the same. Dinner, shower, TV on. Around 10 p.m., I went to the kitchen to get water. On the way back, I stopped in the middle of the living room without knowing why. I felt it again. The same sensation, but stronger. The certainty that someone was out there, looking right at me. It wasn't maybe. It was someone is there. This time, I decided to look. I walked to the living room window, held the curtain carefully, and pulled it slightly to the side. At the corner, leaning against a pole, was Paolo. I recognized him instantly. Same slim build, same team shirt. He stood sideways, his face turned directly toward my house. No cigarette, no phone in his hand. Didn't look like he was just thinking. It was a focused stare. Out of instinct, I pulled the curtain a bit more and waved. "Paolo," I called out, loud enough to be heard. Nothing. He didn't blink, didn't move his chin, didn't change his expression. Just stood there, staring in the direction of the living room. That was the first moment something no longer fit in the weird but explainable category. While I was still looking at him, I noticed something else. Farther down the street, near another gate, was another person. A slim figure, possibly the broom lady. She was half hidden behind the gate, only her head showing past the bars. Her face was turned toward my house too. Two people, standing still, watching. My stomach tightened. Could be coincidence. Could be paranoia. I could have stepped outside and asked them directly, but I didn't. I was stuck between "this feels dangerous" and "this sounds too ridiculous to confront." I let go of the curtain. I went back to the couch, but from that moment on, the TV was just background noise. I could feel it very clearly, that the house had become the center of something going on out there. Throughout the night, I woke up several times thinking I heard slow footsteps on the sidewalk, stopping in front of the gate. When I held my breath, the silence grew heavier. No cars, no dogs, nothing. Just the ceiling fan spinning with its uneven noise. The next morning, I decided to bring it up. I saw Paolo again in front of his house, wiping his hands on a rag. "Hey man," I started, trying to sound casual. "Last night I saw you at the corner. I even called out to you. You gave me a bit of a scare. I thought something had happened." He frowned, genuinely puzzled. "Last night? Around the corner?" he repeated. "Yeah, like 10:30 or 11. You were by the pole, looking over here." He shook his head. "That wasn't me. I went to bed early. I was dead tired from work." There was no sarcasm in his voice, no hidden smile, no look that said, "I'm messing with you." He sounded sincere. The unsettling part came when he clenched a rag in his hand while saying it. It was quick, but I noticed. The broom lady nearby took the chance to say good morning. I was still unsure, so I asked, "You don't usually hang around outside at night, do you? I thought I saw someone by your gate yesterday." She looked at me, smiling just like the first day. "Me? Oh no, I don't go outside at night. Only in the morning to sweep. Once it gets dark, I stay inside." Then went back to sweeping, like I had just asked for the time. That was the moment things left the weird but explainable zone and entered another one. Everyone was denying it too naturally. No laughter, no guilty silence from someone pulling a prank. Just a rigid, rehearsed normalcy. On the third night, I stopped lying to myself. I knew it would happen again. I closed the other windows early, leaving only the living room curtain. Did everything normal. Ate dinner, scrolled on my phone, answered messages, watched TV, but the feeling of waiting for something never went away. Around 10, the shift happened all at once. The air in the living room got colder, no explanation. It wasn't wind or a draft. Everything was shut. It felt like someone had just dropped the temperature in that one room, dry and sudden. My body reacted instantly. Shivered down my spine, sweaty hands. I stood up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain. At the same corner where I had seen Paolo, there was now a woman. She looked like the one I'd seen with a child, but I can't be sure. She was partially hidden behind the corner wall, with part of her body out of sight and her face sticking out just enough to see the house. Her eyes were fixed on the window. Dark, no streetlight reflection, like they absorbed more than they reflected. A bit farther away, leaning against a tree, was another figure, slim, maybe a teen or a young adult, hard to tell, pressed flat against the trunk, too still, not shifting weight, not moving hands. Face turned toward my house too. This time, it wasn't just the feeling of being watched. It was the feeling of being measured. "You okay?" I asked loudly from the window. No one moved. If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny anymore. I added, my voice sharper than I expected. Total silence. No blinking. No head turning. I knew I could call someone, complain to the host, call the cops, whatever. But another thought came, stronger. If I did that, by the time the police arrived, there'd be no one there. And I'd become the weird guy who sees things. I dropped the curtain, my fingers ice cold. The rest of the night was a mix of vigilance and broken naps. I'd lie down, pretend to sleep, but every little sound made me open my eyes, expecting to hear footsteps stopping in front of the gate. At one point, I clearly heard it. The scrape of a shoe sole on the sidewalk, right outside. Just once. Long. Then nothing again. By morning, the neighborhood seemed to mock me with how normal it looked. People washing their cars, radios on, smell of coffee in the air. Passing the corner, I saw the same tree, same pole, same houses. No marks, no clues that someone had stood there for hours. I spoke to another neighbor, a lady selling snacks on the corner, made small talk, circled around the topic, then casually asked, "Do people usually hang outside late at night around here?" She laughed. "No way, sweetie. Folks here go to bed early. This neighborhood's way too quiet at night." Same answer every time. Nobody stays out late. Like it was a rule. The interview was scheduled for the next day, Friday. I could have found another place to stay, but something in me insisted on staying. Part pride, part stubbornness, part needing to prove to myself that the problem was all in my head. I didn't believe in supernatural stuff. That's what I held on to. On Thursday night, the last before the interview, I was ready for anything. But nothing I expected came close to what happened. Around 10:30, the living room light started to feel dimmer, not flickering, not malfunctioning. It was like the night outside had pressed up against the window pane. The feeling of being at the center of an invisible circle came back, overwhelming. Instead of going to the living room window, this time I went to the bedroom window. It faced the side of the house, that narrow corridor leading to the street. From there, I could see just the end of the wall and a bit of the sidewalk, right at the corner. That's when I saw it. A face. Just a face. No neck. No shoulders. No body. It was peeking around the edge of the wall, like it was fit into the corner. The upper part, forehead, eyes, part of the nose, was sticking out past the edge. The rest, supposedly, was hidden. But the position didn't make sense. It looked attached to the corner, not part of a body. It was a normal face. No white eyes, no wide open mouth, no bulging veins. But something was wrong. The face was too still. The eyes open, locked, as if all the attention in that thing was directed at me. Through the window. Fear didn't come first. What came was anger. That's enough. I yanked the front door open, stormed out into the street in some childish instinct of, I'm gonna catch whoever's doing this. The air was colder than it should have been. I walked fast toward the corner, not even checking the sides. As I walked down the sidewalk, I could still see that same part of the face peeking from the window angle, like it was still there, staring at me. And then, the thing that destroyed any chance of logical explanation happened. The face started rising, not like someone standing up, pushing themselves up with their hands. No neck or torso followed. It just slid upward smoothly, as if it was on an invisible track in the corner. The eyes rose, the forehead, the top of the head, and no other part of the body appeared. It was as if behind that corner there was nothing. My brain froze. For a few seconds, I tried to convince myself I saw it wrong. It was some light trick, someone who ran off. Then I did the obvious. Ran to the corner, turned around the wall. No one there. The sidewalk empty. The side corridor dark, but empty. No slamming gate. No footsteps running away. No silhouette. Nothing. Just the corner of the wall, the night. Even the face, the part one had seen, had vanished like it had never been there. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to my own heartbeat in my ears. The air on that street corner felt a few degrees colder than the rest. There was no wind, but I could feel something brushing against my skin, like the place remembered something had just been there. That's when fear fully hit me. Up until then, I clung to the idea of weird neighbors. After that bodiless face sliding upward from a corner where no one could have physically been, I knew I wasn't just dealing with human behavior anymore, that I rushed back to the house, almost stumbling, torn between not wanting to turn my back on the street and the desperate need to lock myself in. I shut the door, shoved a piece of furniture in front of it on reflex, as if that could help, and spent the rest of the night sitting on the couch, lights on, staring at the door. Every now and then, I thought I saw a shadow pass by the living room window. Too fast to be sure. Could have been a car, reflection, anything. But by then, there was no benefit of the doubt left. When the sky started to lighten, my suitcase was already packed. I canceled the rest of the stay on the app, made up some family emergency, called the company, and canceled the interview. The HR guy offered to reschedule, insisted, talked about the opportunity. I said I'd get back in touch. I didn't. I waited for the rideshare car by the door, standing, with the feeling that someone out there was watching me leave. When the car turned the corner, I looked through the rear window. The neighborhood looked perfect again. Sun on the facades, people sweeping their sidewalks, a dog napping in the shade, a kid riding a bike. No one standing still. No one staring at any house. It was like the nights belonged to a different reality altogether. Since then, I keep asking myself if everything happened exactly how I remember, or if my mind filled in the blanks with fear and exhaustion. I wonder if the neighbors were testing me, playing some elaborate prank, creating the feeling of being followed just to see how the outsider would react. I wonder if there's some strange custom there, a kind of ritual. Watch who arrives, deny it in the morning, pretend nothing happened. But then I remember that face rising straight up from the corner, no body, no physical explanation, and that theory falls apart. I could have written everything out, left a huge review on Airbnb, warning future guests. But I didn't. I wrote the basics. Simple house, quiet neighborhood, attentive host. 5 stars. I'm not the kind of man who runs from noises in the dark. I get angry, sure. Fear? I manage it. I've always been much more the type to go check what's going on than the one who locks himself in a room, especially when someone with me depends on me. And that's exactly why this story gets under my skin so much. I did everything I could. I went as far as I could go. But in the end, what was in that forest wasn't something I could fight. And that's what still fills me with rage to this day. The house renovation was turning into chaos. Dust, construction workers, constant noise. Instead of staying in that hell for weeks, we decided to rent an Airbnb for a while. We found a simple house in a seemingly quiet neighborhood with a yard and space for our 2 dogs. The only unusual detail was the back of the property. The rear wall didn't back onto another house. It backed onto forest. A wooded area common in the region, tall trees, thick trunks, deep forest silence. Nothing major in theory. Nature, I thought. Better than a wall with noisy neighbors. We arrived one ordinary afternoon. The neighborhood seemed quiet, modest houses, a few neighbors on the sidewalks. The Airbnb was decent. Small living room, open kitchen, 1 bedroom, bathroom. Nothing fancy, but functional. The yard was big, patchy grass, a back wall partly made of wire fencing that opened directly into the woods. The dogs ran around the yard, sniffing everything. One of them, the more curious one, went straight to where the tree started, sniffing like he'd just discovered a whole new world. The other stuck closer to us, pacing back and forth, barking at the wind. From where I stood, I could see a line of trees just beyond the wall. After about 5 or 6 meters, it was already full shadow, like a dark green wall that swallowed light. At first, I liked it. Quiet forest smell, a bit of wind. Better than a noisy street. The first night was normal. Tired from the move, we ate something simple, watched TV, and went to bed early. The dogs stayed inside, one at the foot of the bed, the other in the hallway. No strange barking, no weird sounds. Just the distant noise of crickets and the occasional car on a far-off street. The next day, we did our usual routine. I worked remotely, handled a few errands. We ran to the store and came back. Nothing unusual. It was late in the afternoon when things started to shift. She had gone out to the yard with the dogs while I was wrapping up work. When I got to the back door, I saw her standing still, staring at the woods, both dogs alert with ears perked up. "What is it?" I asked. Nothing, she replied, still staring into the trees. I think I saw someone in there just now. Someone? I frowned. Could be someone walking a trail or something, right? There wasn't a trail, and it wasn't walking like a person. It was just a shape between the trees. I thought it was a big animal at first, but... She paused. It looked like it was standing still, watching us. I looked. The woods were just the same, dark mass, a few sunbeams slicing in at an angle, nothing moving. Not even a bird in sight. Probably an animal, I said. Maybe a stray dog or something. This is forest country. It's normal. She sighed, still uneasy. The dogs didn't seem to think it was so normal, though. They kept going up to the wall, sniffing, growling low. No barking, which stood out to me. They were way too alert. But I shoved it into the mental drawer labeled, "They smell animals. It's fine." We locked up the yard and went inside. Night fell. Almost at bedtime, both dogs got restless. They paced the house, came to the back door, sniffed the crack at the bottom, then walked away again. The full moon made the yard brighter, cold light spilling across the grass. I was on the couch, trying to relax, but I kept one eye on them. At one point, they both went to the door, stopped, froze, and stared in the same direction, toward the forest. What now? I muttered, getting up. I opened the glass door just enough to peek out, keeping them inside. The night was clear, moonlight lighting up the yard like a natural spotlight. The trees at the back formed a black mass. No wind. Nothing moved. Until something did move. It wasn't a single branch swaying like when a small animal passes. It was a chain of movement, as if a block of trees had been pushed outward from the inside. Trunks flexed slightly. Leaves rustled in a wave from left to right. Then everything stopped. Something big had passed through, but I didn't see what it was. Just the trail left behind in the canopy. The dogs began growling, baring their teeth for raised. Deep, serious growls. They weren't bluffing. A wave of anger rose in me, alongside the alarm. Easy, I muttered, more to myself than them. If someone's messing around in the yard, I'll deal with it. But whatever it was far, beyond the wall, deep in the forest. I still clung to the big animal explanation. I stared harder, trying to see details. Nothing, just the leftover motion in the trees, then stillness again. I closed the door, but the discomfort lingered. We slept badly. The next night, the moon was even brighter, almost white. The yard looked like it was under a floodlight. It was late, close to midnight. I was in the kitchen getting water. She was on her phone in the living room. The dogs had gone out to do their business. One came back quickly, sitting by the glass door, staring outside intently. The other didn't come back. Where is he? I asked, confused. I stepped out into the yard, calling his name. He responded with a short bark near the wall. I walked toward it. Then I heard the first sound that made my whole body freeze. A yelp of pain. Not a scared bark, the kind of sound a dog makes when something hurts. Loud, cut off halfway. Then two more yelps, short, like someone was squeezing his body. Then silence. Hey, I shouted on impulse. Let him go. I ran to the wire part of the fence. There was a hole at the bottom. He'd probably slipped through it, into the woods a few meters. The moon lit up part of the ground on the other side, but not enough for me to see clearly. I didn't think. I just felt fear and rage. Fear of losing my dog. Rage at whatever had touched him. I rushed back inside, went to the laundry area where I'd seen a machete leaning with some other tools, probably left by the owner. I grabbed it, took a small flashlight from the kitchen. Then I went back out. She showed up at the door, pale. What happened? He's in the woods, whining, I said, already boiling. I'm going after him. Don't go alone, she begged, anxious. Call someone, call the police. If I wait, he dies in there. And this is who I am. That's the kind of thing I can't not do. She could tell by my tone I wasn't backing down. She stayed by the door, holding the other dog close by the leash. I crawled through the hole in the fence. The air changed immediately. The forest smell was stronger damp. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in broken beams of shadow and light. Come here. I called, hard on my throat. Nothing that I walked a few steps, flashlight aimed ahead. The sound of the crickets seemed distant, like they were behind a wall of silence. All I could clearly hear was my own breathing and the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. Then I saw it, and for a moment, I thought I'd gotten there too late. His body was lying on its side, just a few steps away, in a small clearing. The position was wrong, like he'd been dropped there. No tension. His chest wasn't moving. I didn't get closer to see more detail. I didn't need to. No was all I could say. I stepped forward. The machete scraped against a branch, and the sound echoed weirdly, like it bounced off a closed room. That's when I noticed something else. It wasn't just the silence of the insects. It was the feeling that I wasn't the only living thing in that part of the forest. A sound came from my right, leaves being crushed under slow, heavy steps. Deliberate. No rush. Circling the clearing. Another from my left, a branch snapping higher up, like something brushed against it. The trees around shifted slightly, not wind, like something had pushed one, and the motion rippled through the others. I stood frozen in the center, machete in one hand, flashlight in the other. The beam shook. The light cast shadows longer than the trees. I spun, tried to follow the sound, but it always felt like it was just behind me. I never saw anything clearly, just motion at the edges. Shadows too dense between trunks, like something was always one step away from stepping into the light, but choosing not to. My chest started to ache. The rage from before was still there, but now mixed with something else. The clear realization that if I pushed forward, I wouldn't come back. Every instinct screamed one thing: get out now. I looked one last time at my dog's body on the ground. Everything in me wanted to go to him, pick him up, take him back. But with every inch I turned my foot, the sounds got closer. The circle tightened. It was like being watched by dozens of unseen eyes. I backed out. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't easy. It was a half-blind retreat, walking backward until I could turn, crawling through the fence hole with my heart pounding, expecting at any second to feel a hand, a claw, anything, grab my back. When I crossed back over, she was already there, clutching the leash in both hands. "Well," she asked, voice trembling. "He's gone," I said. "No details. We'll go back in daylight. For now, we go inside." I pushed them both in, locked the door, shut the windows. The house felt smaller now. I turned off the front lights, turned on more in the back, like that would create some kind of barrier. That night, the forest made sure we remembered it was there. We heard sounds at the back constantly. Light steps near the wall, leaves being dragged like something large moving slowly. The trees shifted in chunks, like before, but closer. It felt like something came right up to the edge of the yard, then retreated. Once, I clearly heard 3 heavier steps, like something had dropped into the yard from a wall. I went to the glass door with the machete in hand, stood there, staring at the moonlit grass. Nothing visible, but I felt it, almost physically. The air colder near the wall, pressure on my chest when I stared into the tree line. The moonlight looked weaker at the edge, like something was standing there, blocking the light just enough, without shape. "If you come in here, I'll kill you," I muttered, more to keep myself grounded than to threaten anything. Nothing came in, but nothing left either. The feeling of being surrounded lasted the entire night. We barely slept, if you can even call it that. I dozed in a chair, machete by my side, waking at any noise, peeking through gaps. Eventually, the sky began to lighten. With the sun up, it all felt more distant, almost absurd. But the memory of that body on the ground left no room for maybe I imagined it. I had to go back, not just out of anger. I needed to be sure, to see it properly. She didn't want to go. Stayed inside with the other dog. I grabbed the flashlight again, more out of habit, and crawled back through the fence into the woods. The air was still colder in there, even with sunlight. I retraced my steps, recognized some marks, the fallen log, the root I nearly tripped over the night before. I reached the clearing where, hours earlier, my dog had died. There was nothing. Nothing. No body, no fur, no sign on the ground that anything had been dragged. Not even a drop of blood on a leaf, rock, or root. Just dry leaves on the ground, untouched. like nothing had ever stepped there. I stood in the center of the clearing, confused. Looked around, searching for any trace. If it had been some normal animal, it would have dragged the body somewhere. There'd be signs of struggle, claw marks, trails, blood. There was nothing. It was like he'd never even been there. That's when the fear stopped being just fear of something out there, and became fear of losing my mind. I knew what I'd seen. I knew where I'd stopped. I knew where he'd been lying. But now the forest said no. I stood still a while longer, listening for anything beyond my breathing. Nothing. Not even the same footstep pattern from the night before. Just the sound of insects. Normal. And that was what bothered me most. The normality. I went back home, quieter than when I'd left. She looked at me, searching my face for the answer before asking. Well, he's gone, I said. Nothing there. No trace. The silence that followed was heavy. The small house, the yard, the woods behind, everything felt smaller. That's when we decided to talk to someone. We went to the nearest neighbor's house, an older man who had greeted us on the first day. He met us at the gate, wearing the expression of someone who already knew this conversation wasn't going to be casual. I explained the basics, noises in the woods, the dog going in, yelping, the body on the ground, footsteps circling, the body disappearing. He listened to everything silently. When I finished, he didn't laugh, didn't doubt me, didn't say, "You're imagining things." He sighed, glanced quickly at the tree line, then back at me. "People around here don't like talking about that," he began. "But it's not the first time something's in those woods." "What kind of thing?" I asked, impatient. He hesitated before answering. "Older folks say a man went off into the forest a long time ago. They say he didn't come back as human. Some nights he's a man. Some nights he's a beast. But not a normal beast. And not normal people either." I let out a laugh, not mocking, just tense, try to break the mood. "You're talking about a werewolf?" I asked. "Call it whatever you want." He shrugged. "All I know is forest animals don't kill a dog like that and make the body disappear without a trace. And people don't move trees like that. Around here, we learn not to call out to it, not to go after it, and not to stare into the woods too long." My anger flared instantly. "So you all knew something was out there, and nobody says anything when someone rents a house basically attached to the forest?" My voice was louder than I intended. He held my gaze without backing down. "We learn how to survive," he said. "Rule number 1 is, don't poke it. You went in with a machete. Good thing you came back. If you listen to me, take your wife, your dog, and leave. Let whatever's out there stay out there. It's not something you solve with bravery." That last sentence cut straight through me. Because bravery? I had plenty. Anger? Even more. The urge to go back in there and hunt whatever had taken my dog. To confront it. To hit something. That urge was burning inside me. But underneath all of that was the memory of that moment in the clearing when every instinct in me screamed that if I took even 2 more steps, I wasn't coming back. Deep down, I knew it. If I had insisted, I wouldn't be here telling this story. We walked back to the house in silence. When I closed the door, I looked out at the yard, the wall, the forest, as if I were saying goodbye not just to the place, but to the idea of fixing any of this. We packed fast. I called the Airbnb owner, made up some excuse about the renovation being moved up. He was understanding, didn't ask many questions. We threw what we'd brought back into the bags. The remaining dog, now glued to us, jumped into the back seat. Before getting into the car, I looked at the tree line one last time. Sunlight hit the canopy, making the whole place look almost beautiful. If I didn't know what I'd heard, felt, and seen, I could easily believe it was just a normal stretch of woods. But as I stared, I had the impression, and I can't call it more than that, an impression that a patch of shadow between 2 trunks was darker than the rest, as if something stood there, motionless. No clear shape, no eyes, just a difference in the darkness. I looked away first. There were no dramatic consequences afterward. Life went on. We returned to the renovation, to routine, to the city. No curse, no recurring nightmares of creatures chasing me. What remained was a strange mix of shock, frustration, and respect. Shock, because that forest was not just forest. Frustration, because I lost a dog and did nothing more than back away. Respect, because I now understood, in practice, that not everything you can feel is something you can fight. To this day, whenever I drive past a stretch of dense forest, especially on a full moon night, I look into the trees while trying not to look too long. Any cluster of branches moving together puts me on alert. And every time I hear someone say, "Oh, it's just forest, there's nothing in there," I want to answer, "You have no idea what's in there." If you're still here, you're brave enough to subscribe.